Okay. Now let's start the things from the very basics. So let's go one step back first of all. Now let's talk about this particular topic. What is a function? Can anybody tell me what is a function?
So you give some input and you expect some output.
Yes, absolutely.
Logic,
Set of
logic by which
instructions.
you
Set of instructions. Absolutely.
logic by which you get the instruction and produce the related output which you want.
Absolutely. So function is a set of code which is meant for doing something. That something can be anything. It can be a business logic, it can be a technical input, it can be a technical something you are trying to do. You are trying to create a function for sending an email, you are trying to create a function for sending SMS, or you are trying to create some business logic, you are trying to create invoice, payroll, HRMS, any kind of logic can be derived into a function. Now, function can be a 2 lines of code, or function can be 1,000 lines of code. It doesn't matter, right? So function is basically a unit of work which is meant to do something. Okay. Now we are talking about Azure functions. Now you must be writing your programs and you must be writing your websites and things like that. And you might have, in technical terms, you might have thought about layers. You might have thought about business logic. You might have thought about business layers, data access layers, and things like that. Typically, when we think of functions, you will say, oh, I'm going to write functions in my business logic so that I can call it from the user interface. And my user interface can be anything. It can be a mobile app, it can be a web app, and it can be that kind of an architecture, right? So you are talking about the business logic written in the middle tier or the business access layer, right? Now, we are trying to break away from that particular analogy. Now, that's what I'm going to discuss. Now, one more important thing which has been written in this particular slide is serverless architecture. This is a buzzword which is coming in. Serverless doesn't mean serverless, first of all. It is just the buzzword which is being used right now. Now, how that is true and what is not true about it, we will discuss that. Okay. I added few slides just for the introduction because I was not sure what the audience it would be. So I will just try to go through some of the slides. Some of the things he has already covered in the introduction part, where he spoke about the hybrid kind of environment. So you have an organization where you have a private cloud. When I say private cloud, means your private infrastructure. You have your own databases, you have your applications, you have your operating systems, you have your virtual machines, you have your network, you have storage and things like that, right? So this is the typical architecture which the previously the companies used to had. आज से 10 साल पहले 15 साल पहले when the cloud was not there, हम लोग जब बनाते थे, I used to write my application 97 98. At the time, whenever I used to go to a customer environment, I would go and install a database on their machine. I will go and install even the operating system on their machine, database on their machine. I will basically set up their LAN and things like that. And then that application would start, right? And I would get paid 3,000 rupees for that. So that was those were the days when we started working. So so this is the private cloud. Now, how this has moved now. So when we talk about Azure, we are talking about Windows Azure, and this is the Microsoft Cloud which we touched in the previous session, where we have some buzzwords which are typically being used, which is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and a software as a service. Now, let's just see them. When we talk about infrastructure as a service, means Microsoft is giving you these particular things which are managed by the vendor. Now the vendor can be Microsoft, Amazon, anybody else who is providing you with the cloud. These are the things which you can create. In Azure, you can create your own virtual machines, you can create your own databases, you can create your own operating systems, you can create a VM and then you can install your operating systems and things like that. So this is what is called as infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service, we are not bothered about the operating system. We are not bothered about the virtual machine. We don't know where the virtual machine is. In that case, we are just saying, okay, give me the database. And that database might be residing in any of the servers. You can say, you can define the location as he explained in the first session. Microsoft Azure, Microsoft has created so many data centers, and there are India-based data centers, there are US-based data centers. So you can choose the location. You are just choosing the location, but then also you are not 100% sure where that is. So when you choose Southeast Asia, in Southeast Asia it can be in any of the locations, right? So this is platform as a service. And then we have software as a service. Now, software as a service, when we call about Azure functions, for Azure functions, there is another term which is being used, which is called as functions as a service. Okay, so you just create the function, you write the code, you are not even creating a database, you are not creating anything, you are just writing a function. And that function is giving you an endpoint, a function is being triggered by an event, you are not even bothered about anything else. That is the main advantage of an Azure function. Okay, so people who have not used Azure websites, I'll just try to explain in a very simple language what is Azure website. You go into Azure and you say, I need a new website. Okay, you define the URL of that, and then Azure creates that endpoint for you. You can define a custom domain if you want, or Microsoft is going to give you out of the box domain. Now that endpoint or that website is available now. You can write your own few HTML pages and things like that, and then you can deploy using Visual Studio or something, or you can just package it and you can move that pages into Azure, and your website is up and running. So that is a Azure website. Okay. Now in Azure websites or web apps, there are a few more things which Microsoft has done. There is a term which Microsoft uses, which is called as Azure Web Jobs. Now, when you talk of web jobs, what do we understand? What is a job?
Certain work we have to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Background.
Absolutely, background job. रात को मुझे देखना है कि आज कितने ऑर्डर्स प्रोसेस हुए हैं, उसकी एक रिपोर्ट जनरेट करनी है, रिपोर्ट जनरेट करके आई नीड टू सेंड इट टू ऑल द कस्टमर, और आई वांट टू सेंड सम काइंड ऑफ अ बैंक स्टेटमेंट, ठीक है, टू अ पर्टिकुलर कस्टमर. Now these kind of jobs which I am talking about are timer jobs, right? You are running the timer job every night, you are running a timer job every 30 days, weekly, things like that. Now web jobs can also be triggered by events. For example, there is a job, but that job would only be triggered when HTTP request comes to it. For example, there is a report when a customer clicks on a click of a button. At that time, I want that particular job to be executed. So what I'm going to do, when you click on that button, I'm going to make a HTTP call to the endpoint, and that endpoint is going to trigger the web job. So as I explained, there can be different events which are triggering the web jobs. Now, Microsoft already had these Azure web jobs. Now the next level of Azure web jobs is Azure functions. Okay, I will try to explain what is the difference between a web job and a function. Okay, and why you should use functions, and where you should use web jobs, and where you should use Azure functions. Right now, I'm just going into a little bit of a technology like presentation mode, but I'm going to show you the proper demos and things like that, and things that would be more clearer. But before I start showing you the demos, I need to make you understand a little bit of the concepts that would help. Okay. Now in the first session we discussed about these things. So Microsoft offers Azure App Service. Under Azure App Service, these are the four main items which are covered. I tried to explain what are web apps. So web apps are the websites which you can define. You can create mobile apps in Azure. A lot of people develop different mobile applications, HTML5, Ionic, Cordova, all those kind of mobile applications can be, even iPhone, all those kind of Android, all those kind of applications can be developed in Azure using the mobile apps. Okay. Now this is what we are going to cover. This is not what we are going to cover, but these I would touch the API apps also a little bit in detail, but this is majorly what we are going to cover. Okay, so I spoke little bit about web apps. Okay, now web app is as I explained, it's a website. Okay, it's an application, it's a web application. So how do you do it? You basically first go into Azure and say, I want to create a new web app. Microsoft will give you a blank website with an endpoint. Okay, so you say something test.azurewebsites.net. That's what it would basically give you that. Okay, if that thing is available. If that thing is not available, it will give you an error. You can go and change it, and it will give you the endpoint. Now, then what you do? You use Visual Studio, Visual Code. How many of you have used Visual Studio? Okay, lot of absolutely. So great. I'm within my Microsoft community then. Okay, so we have Visual Studio, we have Visual Studio Code which we can use. We can create a new web application. You can add the pages, you can write your own C# code, you can write your assemblies, you can do whatever you want to do. You can add a database here. You can do database operations, CRUD operations, write SQL scripts, you can use LINQ and things like that. So you can create an application. And then what you do, you basically put it into a repository. Now your repository can be GitHub, it can be TFS. How many of you have used TFS? Team Foundation Services. Okay. So it's SourceSafe, GitHub. It's other name of SourceSafe. So Microsoft version of SourceSafe or GitHub or GitLab is TFS, Team Foundation Services. Okay. Now, either you can basically put it in the repository, or if you are not a great fan of, you want to keep it locally, you can just build it, and from Visual Studio you can right click and say deploy. When you click on deploy, it will say, okay, where do you want to deploy? It will ask the endpoint or the URL of the website where you want to deploy, and it would get validated and it would get published. So on a click of a button from Visual Studio, all the pages, everything would be deployed to the cloud, and your website is up and running. You can have a local connection string here of the database. When you deploy, you can say, okay, now my connection string is this. So automatically your connection string gets changed, or you can go on the Azure also and change the connection string to the database. Okay.
What about the connection string?
Yeah. So in Visual Studio, when you right click and when you say deploy, it creates a profile. Okay. So you can create different profiles. You can say dev profile, staging profile, production profile. When you are creating a profile, immediately whatever is there in your app.config or the web.config of your file, it will read and say, okay, this is the entry which is there in your web.config. What is the corresponding entry which I should use when I do the deployment? Okay. So for example, on your local machine, the database server might be on your local machine. So when you are deploying it to dev, you can say, okay, use this connection string. Okay. And when you say deploy, when you use that profile, automatically that connection string would be used when you use to the publishing. Okay. This is how you do mobile apps. I'm not a great expert on mobile apps, but just the basic thing. So you use Visual Studio Xamarin to basically create the mobile apps. Now Visual Studio also give you templates for Ionic, Cordova and things like that. So you can use Visual Studio for creating HTML5 hybrid applications also. So you can create applications in Ionic, Cordova, everything in Visual Studio. Same process, you create the project, You put it in the repository, you test it locally, and then you use Azure to deploy it. Same process, absolutely same. So this is how you deploy your mobile
So
applications.
what will happen if we had created the project in the in other studios rather than the Visual Studio and we want to put it on the Azure?
So Visual Studio is just nothing but a file structure. If you see Visual Studio, what Visual Studio does, or if you open a CSproj file, or if you open a .sln file, which is the solution file, it is nothing. It just has the list of files which are there in your project, right? So what you can do is in Visual Studio, you can, for example, you might have created Cordova project in some another technology, right? You copy that code into a folder, okay, and then you say new solution, empty solution. So Visual Studio will create an empty solution, and then you say add files, and it would go and add all the files and the folders. So for example, you might have created a folder for the scripts, images, or whatever, and then you can just add it, and then you can save it and right. Okay. Okay. Now this is the little bit of the basic. I'm just trying to cover the basics of the cloud, because unless you understand the concept or the advantage of the cloud, there is no point going to the advanced topics. Okay. So before the cloud came in, we used to buy the server. We will keep the server in our home. You will basically build the application, and then you will deploy it at the customer. Now, this is an interesting slide. These are the number of questions which we used to think previously when we used to create on-premise applications. Who monitors my server? Who is going to monitor my server? What packages should be installed on my server? What size of the server should I buy? How many servers do I need? Do I need a secondary network connection in case the first network connection fails? What media should I use to keep the backup? When we used to initially do the development, we used to keep all those drives to basically take the copy of the whole operating system and things like that, in case if the customer goes down and things like that. How do I deploy the new code to my server? My customer used to stay in different locations. I used to build my code. Every day I used to create a exe, take to the server location, copy on their machine, and I used to do that, right? How do I increase the server utilization? My local server was really a good server. Okay. Initially, when I started working, laptops were not there. So I used to take those CPUs with me. Then I used to go to the customer location. And then I used to attach it to their monitors and things like that. Okay. What OS should I use? Who is going to, what is the license which I should use? So all these kind of so many questions which a developer need to understand or think about before he starts up building the application. Now, how things changed. This is infrastructure as a service. Around 2004, 2002, there were companies who started giving you the servers. Okay, so they started giving you just the servers. Okay, they will say, okay, we will charge X amount and we will give you the server. You install whatever you want to do on that particular server. What changed when that happened? How long does it take to provision a new server? That question was gone, because now there was somebody else who is provisioning it for you. What is the size of the server should I buy? That question was gone. What happened in case of the server hardware fails? That question is gone. So similarly, there were a lot of questions which were related to server that went away as other people were providing you infrastructure as a service. So all these questions related to server were gone. Now, here comes platform as a service. When I say platform as a service, we are not even bothered about the server. We don't know where the server is, what is happening to the server and things like that. Now, what happened as soon as the platform as a service came in? Which OS should I use? I'm not bothered which OS you are using. How often should I patch my server? Patching is taken care by Microsoft or Amazon or them. So all these questions went away as platform as a service came in. Now here comes functions or the next level of platform as a service. Now here when I talk about Azure functions or serverless technology or serverless architecture, even how many servers do I need? Right now, is anybody using platform as a service? Okay, so you have hosted your website somewhere, right? So you are always thinking about how do I scale up or how do I scale out? Okay, so assume that a number of customers are going to increase. So in that case, what should I do? Is my performance okay or not? If the performance is deteriorating, do I need to add more servers? Should I increase the RAM? Or should I add more server? Or should I use the load balancing and things like that? You are thinking about those things right now, right? Now, so when we talk about serverless technologies or function as a service, even those things you don't have to worry about. Okay, so these questions, how do I increase the server utilization? Right now you are thinking about the cost factor. Okay, if I add 2 months of resources, what is my cost factor? If I don't add too many of resources and if the customer is feeling the heat of it, if he's not happy with the performance of the website or the product, he's not going to come back to my product, right? So these all things that you are thinking right now. So when we talk about serverless technologies, even no questions are left, and right now all those questions which we used to initially think, all are gone. Now you have this, and you just have some configurations which you do to scale up and scale down. So I will just try to explain how that is done. Okay, now this is just the concept. You will see how that is being done. Okay, let's see a demo and then we'll come back to the theory, because I think I'm talking more on the theory side. Let's see a function first, just a very basic function, and then we'll come back to the concept again. Okay. Yeah, sure. My browser is not running. So, okay, sure. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the theory of how do you create a function app and things like that. Let's just quickly see a very small function, what we do. So this is my Azure environment which I typically use, and I have created a function app. Function app is nothing but is an app which contains multiple functions. So it is a combination of functions. Why do you need function app? For example, if you have some common settings which you want to apply to all the functions, you can create a function app, add 20, 30, 50, 100 functions into it, and then apply the common settings to it. For example, you are building an invoice application, you are reading the data from some database, and you have written current operations. So for example, you have written one function for creating, one function for deleting, one function for update, but all of them are going to use the same connection string. So it makes sense to create a function app and use the same connection settings or the app settings for that particular thing. So function app is nothing but a combination of functions. So here, this is the function app, and you can see here, these are the functions which I have kind of created. Now let me go and create a new function completely here. Now in Azure, when you create, so this is the Azure portal. Now I will go back to what are these templates and things like that. But what I wanted to show you a very initial sample of a function. Okay, so I said I need a new function, and Microsoft basically created a function or an environment for me in the browser. I can do the same thing in Visual Studio also. I don't have to use the browser for developing Azure functions. In Visual Studio also, Microsoft has given the templates for creating the functions, but right now, just for the convenience purpose, I am just using the browser. So when I said new function, Microsoft just gave me this particular run method, okay? And now I can go and write anything inside this, okay? And that would basically become my function. That would become my function. Now, what is the advantage of this? As a developer, I don't have to think about the server. I don't have to think about where I'm going to deploy it, how I'm going to deploy it, whether it is going to scale it up or not. Taking an example of an application, if you think about a particular application, what happens in an application? So for example, I'll give you an application which I typically work, a finance application. A finance application has some pages, which is the content. It has some business logic, it has some functions for sending emails, logging, SSL, security functions, reporting, things like that. Now what I can do with this kind of architecture is, I can divide all the things into small functions, and in technical terms, those functions are called as micro or nano functions. Okay. What is the advantage of doing that? The advantage of that is a function becomes very typically a reusable kind of thing. You don't have to worry about what server, where the server is installed, what it is doing, and things like that. Now, when I create this particular function, it basically creates, now I didn't show you that, I will come back to you because I'm just talking about the concept, but Microsoft allows you to create functions in X number of languages. You can create a function in JavaScript and run in Node.js and things like that. You can create a function in Python. You can create a function in C#. You can create a function in any language, whatever you want. Okay. Now, once you create a particular function, Microsoft basically gives you an endpoint. You can call that particular endpoint. For example, people who are working with mobile services or mobile apps, you must be aware about the backend services. Now, backend services are nothing but HTTP endpoints and things like that. But typically, previously when we used to create REST services or REST-based APIs and things like that. And you will create an application, you will define the CRUD, what is the create, what is the HTTP, and things like that. What is the default method and things like that. Now with this, you don't even have to worry about all that. Okay, you don't even have to create an application. You can just say, okay, I need a create function for this. You can go and say, okay, create function. You can write this create function, and it would basically give you an endpoint which you can trigger. Okay, I'll come to different types of functions. So there are a lot of functions here. Now, when I run this particular function, you can see here this function is running. It basically logs whatever is there in this particular function. So it says C# timer function executed. So it says C# timer function executed at a particular time. So there is only one line of code here which is getting executed. So I'm just trying to explain the concept. So Azure functions are a piece of code or a serverless technology. Serverless, now why we are talking about this particular thing as serverless? The word is wrong. There is a server on which this particular function is getting executed. But for us, it is unknown. We don't know where it is getting executed, how it is getting executed. We are not even bothered about the scalability of the function. What Microsoft does is, Depending upon the performance expectations of the customer or depending upon the load of the customer, the Microsoft allocates the resources to the functions. So if your function is being used widely, they will allocate the resources, more resources to it. If the function is not being used, they don't allocate the resources to the function. And the pricing is also very interesting. So the pricing is basically on the usage of the function. So for example, you create a function and that function is never used. So Microsoft won't charge you anything for that. Right now, when you create a web application in Azure and whatever the plan you have choose, basic, standard or whatever you are choosing, Microsoft will associate the resources according to it and they will charge you accordingly. Right? But with Azure functions, that's not the case. With Azure functions, you are only charged if your functions are being called. So for example, you might have created a CRUD operation and you have divided your application into multiple aspects and things like that. And out of that application, only few functions are being called regularly. So you will be only charged for that particular thing, nothing else. Okay, so that's the most important advantage of a Azure functions.
I have a question.
Yep.
Are there any limitations to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come to that. I'll tell you the best practices, how to develop Azure functions, what are the things which you should do in Azure functions, and what are the things which you should not do in Azure functions.
So do Microsoft provide pre-built functions also?
Yes.
Like security or
Absolutely. So when I said new, you might have seen a lot of templates which were coming there. Integration to GitHub or timer kind of a thing, or integration with a database queue. For example, you want a particular function to be called when an item is inserted into the database, right? For example, you want an audit report to be created when a new order is created inside the database. So you can create that type of a function and the triggers can be different for different functions. I'm coming to that. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to show you that because then only you will understand what this is. So what is serverless? It is the abstraction of the servers. You don't know where it is running. You are not bothered about it. You are only as a developer. When a customer comes to you and says, okay, I need this, you are only thinking about the business logic. You are only thinking about the implementation. You are not thinking about the hardware. You are not thinking about the performance. You are not thinking about other things. Okay, so that way you become very, very optimized and you are focused on the thing which you should do. You should not worry about the other things like infrastructure and things like that, right? The functions are basically event driven. Now I'll show you how many events right now it supports. We'll talk about that. But right now it is, all the functions are basically event driven. The performance changes based on how the function is being used, based on the availability and things like that. That is the most important advantage. And the third thing is the sub-second billing. You are only charged for the time which is being used by that particular function on the server. If that function is sitting idle for years, you won't be charged for that particular time. Okay. So it becomes very, very optimum for the businesses, because right now when I go to my boss and say, oh, we want to build this internal application and this is what we want to do, the first thing which my boss asks is, what would be the pricing for this? And like in last few years, everybody has understood this, that cloud is not cheap. Initially, the impression which people used to get was cloud was cheap, but now a lot of people have understood that cloud is not cheap. So the cost becomes a factor because that amount you would be incurred on monthly basis. So the cost is a factor for everybody. So that's why the Azure functions make sense. You would be only charged if that particular function is being used. Advantages, you don't have to worry about the dev operations, server operations and things like that. You can focus on the business logic, reduce time to market because you are only focused about implementing the logic for that particular application. Okay. So what is Azure function in Crux? There is a code, there is an event. That code is called on a particular event, and that is a Azure function. So combination of a code and the event is a Azure functions. Some of the important things: make composite cloud elements insanely easy. Develop functions in C#, Node.js. I'll come to this. So it supports multiple languages: C#, Node.js, Python, F#, PHP, Bash, much more. Easily scheduled, event-driven, takes across the services, exposes functions as HTTP API endpoints. You can scale the functions up and down based on the customer requirement. Easily integrate with logical apps and things like that. I'll come to logical apps a little later. Okay, let's see an example.
So,
Yeah.
so we can make functions in different languages and
Yes.
they can together work.
Yes. So there are 5 developers. One developer works in C#, other developer works in JavaScript. All of them are working on the same application. You create a function for order creation in C#. He creates an order deletion in JavaScript or Node.js.
Because right now that is a major problem because we need to know.
Absolutely. Nothing, no problem.
So,
Yeah.
Sir, how authentication is achieved? Like, if I want to.
I'll come to that. So they support different authentication models. They support, so I'll show you the models. They support key-based authentications. They support claims-based authentication. They support anonymous also. So there are different authentication models which are available. You can define all kind of certificates. So as in the first session he explained, you can now one of the things about Azure Functions is Azure Functions is built on top of Azure Web Apps. So whatever is there in the Web Apps which you use right now for the security, SSL configurations and things like that, all that is available in Azure Functions. Whatever facilities which you are using right now for Azure Web Apps, for example, continuous integration and things like that, all that is available in Azure Functions. Simply gives you the response. So there is a request and the response. In request you are passing some parameters, and in response you are getting some output. So in the request message, it is looking for the name. It's a hello world example. It's a very simple example. In the request message, it is looking for the name. It takes the name, adds the hello to it, and says hello world. Okay. Now I'll just quickly run this particular function. So in Azure Functions, in the user interface itself, they have defined different testing parameters here. So you can basically enter some data here. Whatever you want to test, you can click on run, and it would basically run it, show you the output and things like that. For example, if you want to add some header parameters and things like that, for example, you have created a HTTP method, you are passing some content type and things like that in the header. So you can basically add it to the function here, and that would basically run and do it. So it gives you an end-to-end testing methodology also in the browser itself, and you don't have to basically go into a developer tool and things like that. Okay. When you in C#, when you click on this or when you save something, it would immediately compile it, and if there is some kind of a syntax error inside this, it would basically show you the error at the bottom. Now, people who are very familiar with the C# coding, you can see this. The extension of this particular file is .csx. This is not .cs. Okay, X means it's a scripting file. One of the things which you might see here, it does not have a namespace. So namespace is not there. Okay, so it is a little bit different from a normal .cs file where they have created this. You can from here you can say view files. You can add more CS files here. You can add more shared libraries here. You can basically share the libraries across the CS files and things like that. So this can become a full-fledged, bigger application if you want to build that. Okay. Now let me run this particular function. Okay, so if you see here, I passed the name as Rajendra here, and the output which I got was hello Rajendra Shekhawat. So what it did was I passed a JSON object here, I passed a key value pair here, the name and the whatever the name was, and it basically took the function from here and it basically did it. Now the most important thing which I wanted to show you this is a very simple hello world function. What I want to show you here is this thing. This is the endpoint of this particular function. Now when you create this particular HTTP method, it basically creates an endpoint for you. Okay. Now somebody asked a question about the security. Okay. Now here, if you see here, there is a code which is being passed here. Okay. And this is the code which is being validated inside this. So one way of implementing is you can define your codes and that code gets validated inside the function. So now if I take this particular function and if I do this and if I say name equal to door. Okay, and when I click on enter, it goes and gives me hello door. So this is the endpoint and this becomes my function. I can call this particular endpoint from anywhere. I can call this particular endpoint from my mobile app or anywhere else, and I can write whatever custom logic I want to write inside that particular function. Okay. There is another example which I have, which I created in JavaScript. So this is the trigger. This is exactly the same code, but written in the JavaScript. So this is a Node.js kind of a thing. You have the same code. You have the context and you have the request. From the request, you basically say request body. You get the parameters from there, and then you basically add it to the context. So it's the same code, doing the same thing, but written in JavaScript. I'm sorry, I've just covered half of the presentation. I need to speed up. So let's just quickly go through now most of the things. Okay. So next thing is how does the Azure function architecture works. So at the bottom layer, you have the app service runtime, which is being used. You have web jobs. I explained the web jobs. You have different language runtime, which is being used. So you can write this in C#, Node.js, F#, PHP, and things like that. And then, as I explained in functions, you have the code, and then you have the event or the configuration. So you define that, okay, this is the code which is being executed based on this particular event. So the function contains two parts. One is the code, and second is the configuration. So now, going into a little bit more details of a particular function. So you have the function runtime, you have a trigger. Trigger is the thing which basically calls that particular function. When I created an HTTP function, it means that whenever a HTTP request will come, at that time that particular function would be called. If I create a timer function, it means that whenever that timer executes, at that time that particular function would be called. If I create a queue function, it means that whenever an entry happens in the queue, at that time that particular function would be called. If I create a database kind of a function, so for example, if I have a SQL database and I want whenever a new record gets entered into that particular function, at that time that thing should get called. That is called a database function. Now the code and the configuration is completely separate. So if I have created a function which is called when an entry happens into the database, and I also want to change it, that okay, whenever entry happens in the database, the function should also call, and whenever an email comes, at that time also the function should get called. So that is just 2 minutes job. I can go into the configuration and add one more trigger there, which is the email trigger.
So, can we say that functions are the replacement of web API?
Sorry,
Functions are the replacement of web API.
web API. You can say that because this is the next logical step which Microsoft is going, and even in Amazon also, Amazon has been promoting Lambda. If you might have heard about Amazon Lambda, so that is also something which is called as functions only, but they are giving a name called as Lambda to that. And this whole serverless architecture is something which is buzzing right now, and this is something now. How you are going to use it or how people will start using it, that is evolving, because this is something new and people are using it. I will show you some scenarios. I have few slides which I have created, which how we are using these particular functions in the industry. So I'll come to that.
So this is all related to the new functional programming which is being used by people. Lambda programming.
Yeah, so same thing. So Amazon calls them Lambda, Microsoft calls them Azure Functions or serverless architecture. The concept is the same.
We can do the database connectivity also.
Absolutely. So when you create a function, you say, okay, you can write your own SQL code, whatever code you have written. There is an app settings there. You say, okay, configuration manager.app settings. You write your own whatever code you are writing inside that. So right now, what you do is you create a database layer and you basically create one function for everything, or you distribute it and things like that. Here, for example, if something changes, you just have to change one particular piece of code. You don't even have to do the deployment, right? Because this is compiled at the runtime and it is hosted in cloud. So for example, if some logic changes, you don't have to deploy the DLL and things like that, right? So this is what I was explaining. So you have the business logic, and then you have the configuration or the bindings which are called, which are completely separate from the code. Now binding is something which are the events, which we will see little later on. Okay, so let's go into the code examples. I will show you some of the functions quickly which I have created just for the demo, just to make you understand what those particular functions are doing. Okay, so this is the function which I have created. In the first presentation, we were talking about different services which are available in Azure, and one of the services which he touched was SendGrid. SendGrid is basically used for sending emails. Then there is another third party, Trivilio, which basically is used for sending the SMS and things like that. So here I have used SendGrid. Now this is a function which does nothing. If you see here on the top, I have given the reference to the SendGrid namespace or the DLL for the SendGrid. I have used the namespaces of SendGrid, and then I have just written few lines of code to basically send out the email. So what this function does is this particular function basically sends out an email. Okay. Now also what this particular function does is it basically calls this HTTP. This basically calls this particular backpub.com. It basically gets the response from there. It basically gets the list of books from that particular website, and then it basically adds the books into the email, and then it sends out the email to the customer. Now here, if you see here, it's a simple C# code, nothing much. It basically makes a HTTP client request, HTTP request. It gets the data from that particular website. It parses that particular data. It creates the content, and then it basically creates a new email and sends out the email using the SendGrid API. Okay, very simple thing. Now, the most important part of this particular function, which I have not taken here as yet, which are the triggers. Which are the triggers. Now, here, I think let's see this particular part, which is the manage. This user interface is not coming up properly. This is, I think, maybe because of the resizes or something like that. But when I added a send grid trigger here, it asks for these particular parameters to me. So it says that, okay, if you are adding a send grid trigger to these are the parameters which I define here. So for example, if I say, okay, what is the API key which I should use for the SendGrid? What is the email address which I should use for the from email address? What are some of the parameters? If you see, I have not set the message text. I have not set the message subject and things like that. These are the parameters which I am setting in the function. These are the parameters which are constant. Okay, I want all these particular things to remain the same. Triggers are what will start your function. So this is what is going to start your function. For instance, you can find a trigger on a new Q language. So there can be different sets of triggers. So let's go back to the slide, and I just want to cover the triggers. I think that's the most important part. Yeah. So what are the triggers and the bindings which Azure functions support? I think this is the most important thing which we should know. Then only you would be able to design the Azure functions properly. Now these are the bindings or the Azure functions which Microsoft supports right now. But this is evolving. They may add few more things to this. But right now these are the bindings which Microsoft supports. So when I say trigger, so trigger is the thing which is going to trigger your function. So for example, there are 5 triggers right now which Microsoft supports. Schedule. You can call a function on a particular schedule. So for example, every 2 hours, every 4 hours, every 10 hours, every weekday, you can define it on a schedule. You can create an endpoint or a webhook or a REST-based API, and your function can be triggered by that particular webhook. Okay. Blob storage. If you have defined an Azure storage, whenever an entry happens into that particular storage, your function can be called. Events. There are Azure event hubs which are there that can also be used. I have not explored too much on the Azure event hubs, so I'm not very sure on that. But I have explored blob storage, queues which we have been using very often. So if you are aware about queues are very a technology. You cannot create a function which executes more than 5 minutes. More than 5 minutes. If a function is taking more than 5 minutes, Microsoft is going to time it out. That function is not going to get executed. The reason for that is because if you have created a function and because of some mistake you have put an infinite loop inside that, and your function will keep on running, assume the cost which you will incur because of that. They are saying that they are going to increase the limit to something, but right now the limit is 5 minutes. So the functions are basically meant for light operations. You should use functions for light operations, not for heavy lifting. If you have heavy lifting to be done, then you divide that thing into multiple steps. Don't use just one function which is very heavy, which takes multiple minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes to do. For example, you are uploading GBs of files from one location using the function for that. So instead of that, use different folders and use folders to upload and things like that. Okay. So that is something which typically used for the functions. With functions, you can use async operations. So always try to use async with functions. Don't try to use sync operations. Don't block the thread. Use the async operations. That's the thing. Most important thing. And the functions are basically being used in the cloud. That is a technology which is coming up and being integrated with logical apps and things like that. These are some of the things which are there. Azure functions are completely open source. On the GitHub, you can find the complete code of the Azure functions. You can become part of this particular team. You can contribute to Azure functions. You can fix the defects in Azure functions. You can request, for example, I showed you 6 or 8 triggers. Now in your mind, if some new trigger comes in and if you want to write that particular trigger, you can write that trigger and contribute to the Microsoft team. So this is completely open source, and these are the GitHub repositories which are there for Azure functions. That's it.